you know, Roger he's called me all sorts of things over the years. Whatever. I say McLean. I don't mind. I'm not.
Okay, you're good to go, guys. Off you go.
Thank you. Okay, right, here we are. So welcome everybody to this live ACO Q&A. My name is Ed Wright, and obviously a pleasure to be hosting this evening. And do my eyes deceive me, or do I have an excellent panel of operators in front of me? The answer is yes. Let me go ahead and introduce those. So Roger Tooley, whose selected credits include Hannah Temple and Penny Dreadful. And I have Lilia Salami, whose credits include Looming Tower, Men in Black International, and We Could Be Heroes. And I have Ozzy McLean, whose selected credits include No Time to Die, Tomb Raider, Kingsman, Golden Circle. So welcome everybody. How are we all doing?
Good. Ed, good, thanks.
So we're talking today a little bit about our best days and our worst days, the highs and lows of operating. So, you know, we were thinking perhaps maybe we might learn quite a lot from some days that didn't quite go our way, and celebrate the stuff that did go our way. We are, just a few admin things, we are streaming to Cook, with our friends at Cook TV. We're restreaming everything to their channels, so thanks to those guys. And also we are on our ACO YouTube page, and we're streaming to Facebook Live. So welcome everybody to the people who are watching on there. If you're in the webinar and you want to ask a question, go ahead and use the tab below. It's at the bottom, says Q&A. Put that in there and we'll hopefully get the question to our panel. So just a couple of introductory things. I just want to go round and just check in with everyone really and see where we all are. And can you tell us, just a little start of a 10, what have you discovered or rediscovered in this time of lockdown? Throw that over to you, Roger.
I think I've rediscovered how to have a life outside of work. You know, you get very busy at work and you tend to ignore everything else, and when it's forced upon you, you don't have any choice. And I'm not complaining about it being forced upon me particularly. I'm very lucky I've managed to cope with everything quite well so far. And so I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed my life outside of work, but of course, I'll be looking forward to getting back to work. Nature, of course, as well. I've rediscovered nature. And I've rediscovered my bike.
Yes, I can attest to that as well. I've done the same thing.
Yeah, like most people in the country, I think, really. It's quite busy out there on the roads these days.
Yeah, it's getting busier all the time, isn't it, actually?
Yeah, I've discovered nice natural things, I think.
How about you, Ozzy?
I've rediscovered sleepless nights because we've now got a 12-week-old baby, other baby. So, and rediscovered that spending all this time at home looking after children is, you know, it's quite difficult at times, but fun. Apart from that, yeah, I mean, it's been great. It's been actually timing for me having a new baby and all this going on has worked out. It's worked out quite nicely. However, you know, you do reach the point when you are looking forward to things going back to normal. But bit of DIY, bit of gardening, usual stuff. Nothing terribly exciting. Nature, as Roger said, I'm at home in Scotland. I live in Scotland, so. We live on the edge of the city in Glasgow, so we're very lucky. The countryside's right on the doorstep, so it's good for runs and walks and things like that.
Absolutely. And how about you, Lilia? Whereabouts are you, and what have you rediscovered?
Well, I'm in Casablanca, where I live, so what I've discovered the importance of hearing, because I see pretty much every day the same thing around me in my flat, but I discovered my surrounding with hearing everything, like all the neighbors, all the discussions, all the feelings from a window to another, there are sounds coming out of there, and they are telling you a full bunch of stories. So that's one of the things I've discovered. I wasn't paying enough attention to that, and the sound of animals and things like that, which are much more present in the surrounding. But I also discovered the importance of our job, because watching movies right now is such an important thing for the psychological state we have to face. So yeah, that's the two things really.
So you're based in Casablanca in Morocco, and so how did you become involved with the ACO?
Well, I met Chris Kelvin when we shot some of Men in Black together. And it has been quite, well, 2 years then that I was operating for international crews coming over Morocco, but I do also work outside Morocco sometimes in Europe. And when we discussed about the ACO with Chris, he suggested me to apply and become a member. And I think it's a wonderful place to develop our network and to be aware of whatever technical things are happening, new things, which is really hard for me to get here in Morocco, because I don't have the facilities like ARI or whatever, and to know technically what's new. It seems for me important to be part of a group of that association. And the only way I have otherwise is when the foreign crew comes and they have that new equipment, and that's the only moment I can test it and try it. I don't have that freedom to go to Aramedia and do that, unfortunately.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you're an absolutely welcome addition to the ACO, and thank you very much for joining us in Morocco. I just wanted to move over to you, Roger. Many people will know you as a specialist Steadicam operator. Obviously, a great. Well, you've been doing it a while, as you said to me. Which century did you say you'd started in?
Yeah, the last century.
So obviously, you can speak in sort of terms of, I'm interested to know how you think the culture of using Steadicam has changed over the years in terms of, I guess when you first started, there was very few of you out there and very specialist, and now there's many more operators out there. How do you see that it's changed in terms of the way it's applied to filmmaking now?
Well, you're right. I mean, the main change, I suppose, is that over the years, it's gone from being a very specialized piece of equipment to an everyday piece of equipment. And that's probably testament to all the great shots that people have been doing all around the world. And again, as you said, when I started, there were less than 10 people in this country operating Steadicam. So imagine that. Imagine finding yourself in a position where you're one of 10 in the whole country. I kind of landed on my feet, really. I'd always been interested in it, but that's quite a thing when I think back of that. I was one of an elite bandana wearing brigade of superheroes, and there were only 10 of us. And then gradually over the years, people began to realize that it's not that difficult after all. And so I guess the population grew, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that more people are doing it, because that means that more people can create beautiful shots. But having said that, every job's different, and the flexibility of Steadicam can be a godsend to some directors and a nightmare and a no-go to others. It depends what they like. I mean, I love working on a dolly or a head as well, and it's just that I've been using Steadicam for so long that it's in my blood, and I'm happy with what works for the show. There's nothing nicer than a more beautifully composed static frame, and you might not choose to do that on Steadicam.
So do you see the shift now that perhaps you don't come in and do dailies so often now, and now you're maybe doing more as on B camera or A camera / Steadicam operator in that sort of sense rather than the dailies.
Yeah, I'm and that, you know, everything's fine. Whatever happens is fine. You know, I spent so many years just being the guy that, it wasn't just me, there were 10 others or so, but, you know, being one of the guys that just turns up, and, you know, I might work on 5 different productions in a week, and that was fantastic. And that's how you can become very good at using a piece of equipment when you're forced into using it. You don't know what people are going to offer you, and you're turning up and they overpay you, and so you've got to kind of pull it off if you can. Yeah, I mean, I just followed my nose, and the way it's gone now is that you know, people ask me to stay on productions now. They don't ask me if I did a day now on a job. That's quite a luxury, just turning up for the day. I tend to hang around a bit longer and stick my nose in whenever I can, you know.
I can't get rid of you.
No.
Ozzy, you know, in terms of your career, we were looking at that, is you can see a clear sort of transition from TV into feature films. You know, how did you find that transition for you? And you know, do you see big differences between the television and feature film game, or is it much the same kind of thing for you?
Yeah, it was a kind of slow transition. Different bunch of people ultimately at the time that were, you know, involved in features than in TV. So it was doing dailies when I got asked, you know, if I could, and it was really getting to know people and getting your name involved in those circles, and people learning to trust you, and then realizing that you could do what you said you could do. So yeah, it took time and luck. I guess nowadays, though, the lines are becoming very blurred between TVs and features, with the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and the money that they're spending and Apple on these shows. So it's different now, I think, than maybe from what it once was. That gulf is not the same as it once used to be. But certainly when I look back at the kind of TV stuff I started on, you know, the difference is incredible to what, you know, the work we're doing recently. It's completely night and day.
Do you work on Taggart, by the way? I think.
Yes,
I'm sure I saw Taggart on your IMDb, which is a classic.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I did work
on Taggart.
Yeah, who hasn't worked on Taggart? I think it ran for 25 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I did a couple of. I didn't do a lot on it, but I did a bit. Yeah, that was fun. It was good.
But I think you're right. The relationship between film and TV is, as you say, a little bit more blurred now, in the sense you see some really high quality television productions these days, don't you? And that almost, does that make it easier to slip between the two genres, if you like?
Yeah, I guess it does. It does for everyone if they're going to come across those two. But I think it's still a bit of a learning curve, because you've got probably more people and more equipment, and dare I say, some bigger egos maybe, or not necessarily though. Sometimes the actors might have a bit more control. They're also commonly, everyone seems to be producers now as well. Yeah, just the management of it all, it's just all a much bigger scale, and it's took a little bit to get my head around. I guess that's why it's fortunate being able to do dailies first. You can kind of be a little more under the radar and get an idea of exactly what's going on, rather than landing completely in at the deep end.
Lydia, if I can turn to you, your career is very unique in the sense that obviously your location and the kind of roles that you take on, for example, because I know you operate in drama in a conventional way, but you also have some excellent DP work as well, which I've seen in commercials and also documentary. Can you tell us just how that works out there?
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment, by the way. And it's you know, when you live in here in Morocco or in any Arabic country, the market is restricted, and it goes from super huge production, international production, like super big productions, to 3-people crew documentary. And because we are very few people working behind the camera, holding a camera and doing operator work or DP work, you actually get to do a little bit of everything. Like sometimes a commercial, sometimes a documentary, sometimes a TV series, feature, all that. And you have to be very flexible and adjust yourself to whatever project you are asked to do. Even I've even done some still photography for architects. But you know what is really interesting is to be able to find a system that works for a 3-people crew, and also to be able to adjust yourself to a super big production. And doing, for example, still photography for architects, all of a sudden when I arrive on a set, I realize perspectives and all these sets. I can tell them differently. I can use them differently because I've been through exploring the depth and the perspectives and all that with the still photography with architects. So all that creatively wise bounce to each other, and you know that, for example, when you're going to have a director telling you, okay, now I need that thing to be documentary style and I need you to follow these guys, and we just go improvise with it and just go with the flow, and you know how to do it because you've done it on documentaries. So all of a sudden you don't have these rules anymore. You are not formatted anymore. You just have to be so deeply connected to the moment and just react to whatever happens around you. Sometimes it's a little like, where am I? What should I do? But it's the reason why you have to be grounded and centered and focused and aware of whatever happens around. But it's what makes it exciting, really. That I'm not sure there is an everyday day for me. Every day is different.
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, it's interesting what you say about transferable skill, and I completely agree with you. You can go and work on a completely different discipline. Perhaps it's live TV or a commercial, or as you say, photography, and you can use that skill in another field completely. You just agree with me. That's great. But if I could come back to you, Roger, as we're going around as we do in a little circle. We're talking about best days, worst days, but also I wanted to talk to you a little bit about normal days. And if I can just get my, yeah, there we go. You told me a little bit about some days you can turn up, especially in the days of doing dailies, and you may or may not be, as an operator, party to previous conversations that a DP and a director have been having, and you might show up and on the day have to be involved in quite a long or complicated shot. And you told me a little bit about A Touch of Cloth. I wonder if you could take us through what happened with that one. And I'll post a link to that so that everyone can have a little look themselves, and I'll post that now.
Yeah. Well, basically, I was asked to turn up for a day and work on a TV series. It's a bit different now. Now, when I turn up, I usually know what I'm going to be doing. But again, you know, I was turning up for the day. I knew the DP, I knew the director. I'd worked with them all before, and it was maybe they just thought that Roger could do it. Maybe they just thought that it wasn't necessary to tell Roger what it was because he's done it before. But it doesn't matter how many times you've been doing things, you never want to take it for granted. And it was just simply that I was having breakfast on the bus in the morning, and the director came on board and said, could you just come and have a look round at this shot we're thinking of doing? And you know, I was spending most of the morning so far saying hello to people and kissing and hugging people and generally catching up with old buddies. And then Rory O'Brien was the DP, and Jim O'Hanlon was the director. And Jim took me to this, it was a police station set, and he took me into the police station set. And we walked through it, went up the stairs a bit. And he said, see what you think of this. What we'd like to do is this. And there began a very long description of a shot that started upstairs, came down a corridor, went down some stairs, went down some more stairs, hung about a bit, went down some more stairs, pivoted, went into this big room, and just glided over the room, and went out of the room behind some people, up some stairs again, down a really long corridor quite fast, and then I'd have to do a 90 degrees here, and then another 90, and another 90, and another 90, and it's fast, down the corridor, being pursued by actors, and the actors change over and the dialogue changes, and then coming further down the corridor, coming to rest. I can picture it all now, and coming forward a little bit, and then just finishing in a nice big close-up of the actor. And that's it. And, you know, with something like, I hate stairs. Who doesn't hate stairs and Steadicam? But what are you going to do? You know, if you turn up for the day, you can't say no. Well, I mean, these people knew me, so, you know, I would never say no. I would say, I'll try. And then if you've got people, Tony Kay was the focus puller. It's Tony Kay ACO before he was Tony Kay ACO. He was focus pulling, and you know, you rely on your colleagues to do great things to ensure you don't have to do it too many times. But it was almost 3 minutes long, and still, you know, we did that I think 13 or 14 times, and it takes out of you. But that was perfect that day. We finished that scene at lunchtime, and I went home. It was amazing. I even stayed for lunch, but we'd finished by lunchtime, and they moved on to do other stuff. And I kind of went away, you know, with a nice little smile on my face, really.
Well,
yeah, I was going to say that there's so many things that can trip you up. There was Julian Ryan Tutt, who's a great actor. He was one of the actors, and he only had a few lines, 4 lines or something, and one of his lines was right at the end of the shot, and the whole circus had been going up and around and everything, and then we were coming back into him at the end, and we came into a little profile 2 shot, and he says his final line, and then we end up in a close-up as he walks off in the distance, and on one of them, and it was probably take 11 or something, where everyone is getting a bit frazzled, we thought, we're going to get it now, we're going to get it, we're right at the end, and his line of dialogue there fluffed his line of dialogue, and it's right. What can you do?
Yeah,
You have to dust yourself down and start again. And I think also, and I actually quite enjoy and it's not just with Steadicam, it's with anything that, any kind of situation when you're filming that's difficult. I find if it's really difficult, I have to take myself to a special place. And you know, it must be the same for actors. Not that I'd equate myself to an actor in any way, but if you've got something that, I mean, I've had loads of things that I'm not quite sure if I can do it. But you get caught up in, you can't really say no, especially if you turn up for the day. If you're doing a recce and you're talking about things and you might be not sure about something, then as a team you can kind of manipulate your way around the shooting situation, because you don't want to not be able to do it. You don't want a guy to turn up on the day and then you can't do that shot. It's a disaster, and you don't want to turn up yourselves if you're all on the job together doing the recce. You know, you've got to make sure you know what you're doing on the day. So I just find that it's really helpful. I've done it a few times, handful of times. If I take myself to one side metaphorically and just concentrate. Do you do that, Ozzy?
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to. Yeah, you have to do that. I think that's definitely a kind of learned skill, isn't it? And able to to enable you to execute shots like you're talking about. You really got to switch on, don't you?
You have to concentrate.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
then it's
Yeah,
difficult to concentrate when, this is why I always feel sympathetic towards actors and amazed at how they are able to put to one side all the kerfuffle that's going on. I find that quite difficult if I've got to concentrate, and maybe I'm part of the kerfuffle, so I shouldn't really put it all to one side. But it's an interesting and gratifying way to enable yourself to do things that you're not quite sure that you're capable of doing. But I find if I take myself like a block, just put myself over there and concentrate 101% and just kind of say to myself, you can do this, guy, you know, then it works.
You put your arm around your own.
Yeah, I'll put my arm around myself and give myself a cuddle, and it tends to work.
Because that doubt is got to creep in. It's a completely human thing, isn't it? You think, is there a chance I can't actually do this? You know,
and it's so destructive. So destructive. I mean, it's not just about filming; it's about all walks of life, really. You know, once the little worm gets in there and starts to bury itself into your mind. So all those kind of things, I think those kind of things are some of the most interesting aspects of our work, the kind of mental and emotional response that I have and I feel. In a way, that's more interesting than bits of equipment and stuff. Because, yes, Lilia.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on this. I believe our work is very technical, but it's also a matter of being so connected to what's around us, to be just with the right energy. And we see that energy so much in our shots, in every picture we're doing, in every single frame we are doing. That energy, our physical energy, connected to the actors, connected to the place. We need to be in that very specific place you are talking about. It's somewhere inside of us, a place that needs to be quiet, but also connected and to what surrounds us. And I think it's a kind of meditative process where you really have to put apart disturbance to be just right in what you say.
Ozzy, I'm sorry, do you mind if I ask questions, Ed? It's a bit like I'm trying to take over your job.
Not at all. I'm happy for you to.
No, because I know we were talking about Ozzy's past life and his successes in his past life. And, you know, when you talk about concentration and the things you used to do when the heat is on.
Yeah.
So maybe for people who didn't see that first bit, Ozzy, why don't you just tell everyone your former life first of all, and then tell us how your competitive edge was transferable to your operating.
But so I'm sorry to keep going on, but I just think that I wonder if what you need mentally to be successful with what you did before, you could transpose to your job now, and it's put you in a good mental place to cope with some of the aggro.
Well, I guess what you were describing there, Roger, is definitely something that's seen in a lot of sport, the sport psychology. And most people are physically able to do certain things, whether it's work or in sport, but it's your mind often that stops you from doing it. So, and there are definitely techniques that are involved, you can use to help you with that. When I was involved with sport, we worked with a sports psychologist. So she was brilliant in helping to get the best out of you. Confidence could be knocked, you could be down, and within a 15-20 minute chat with her, you think, okay, I can be the best there is out there. She could really turn that thought process around. So you learn how to deal with these situations, and like you were saying, you take yourself and you can put yourself box almost and silence everything else, and it allows you to concentrate on exactly what you have to do. So there's definitely techniques that I learned through sport that were transferable into work. And you know, it's like sometimes pressures of work, if you're doing a big stunt or something, you know you can only do it once because the reset time or the costs, or so you really got to switch yourself on and make sure you get it right first time. You know, you can't, you know, there's no space for error. And the same we're talking about with Steadicam. If you're going to do a shot like your shot, you got to get it bang on. There's no space for any, you know, any mistakes. So no, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. These skills can be transferred, and it's something that people can learn. But I guess some people are doing them naturally, like you do, without ever having been taught them, or you just know how to do it. But you're aware of it, which is a good thing. People can do it and not be aware of it as well. They don't know how they're doing it, but they just do it. So
would it be beneficial if we had camera psychologists then on set?
Maybe.
You know, I think that Lilia's not feeling quite capable at the moment. Get the psychologist in.
Psychologist, you can do it. Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, do you think production are going to pay for that?
I think it's worth a try.
Yeah.
Could be part of the new normal.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, it might be good. Yeah.
Speaking
you know,
about
like if you're not good enough first time, you're probably out the door. So
speaking about putting ourselves, you know, into throwing ourselves into the sort of our best work and getting to that spot, I thought I'd just bring up a few things for you, Ozzy, in terms of working on what's considered to be one of the pinnacle jobs on the Bond. You completed your work on No Time to Die, which is obviously been put back now in terms of release date. But tell us a little bit about that, and I'll show some pictures of you physically, you know, gritting your teeth and getting down to it.
Well, I mean, what you're going to start on the physical side of it was the hardest part physically was the IMAX handheld. But it's like Roger was saying, you just put yourself in a place where mentally you have to make yourself do it. You know, there's no way you want to be standing with that camera on your shoulder all day long. You just, you know, as soon as you put it on, you immediately want to put it back down. But you have to make yourself do it. And yeah, it was definitely physically demanding. I think the Mark IV camera's 37 kilos and the MSN is 32 kilos. So there's a fair old weight to lump around, and a bit of learning going on how to get the best out of them, how to operate them.
So you're using a cine saddle there for a bit of elbow support?
Yeah, then when it's on your shoulder, it's massively heavy out to the right-hand side. So yeah, it was something to rest my elbow into. That made a huge difference. I found it made a huge difference having that. It really did make it almost manageable. But I mean, I feel so lucky to have been involved in that job and the experience of working with IMAX, because it may never happen again. Who knows? But that job, I mean, we had Panaflexes, we had 235s, 435s, 765s, System 65s, and IMAXs. So there was a lot, you know, there was a lot going on there.
A lot of kit management
for everyone. A lot of kit management. I mean, the ACs, you know, did a brilliant job having to deal with all that. You know, it's.
You want to shout out anyone in particular, or any other operators?
Well, I'd be worried I'd leave someone out.
That's okay.
That's and plus we had different people dipping in and out as well. We had slightly different crew in Italy, and there was a lot of good guys there. I was working with Ollie Tellett, and Paul Snell were my two guys. Two guys I was lucky to work with. But in saying that, they they inherited me because I didn't start the job off. Ollie Longcrane, ACO, started the job, and Ollie had left, and I was asked to come in and take over. So poor Ollie and Paul got stuck with me.
I'm just wondering, sorry, just to bring this picture back up, I'm not sure whose hand this is, actually.
Well, actually, that was us back in the truck testing out, having a look at the IMAX to see what we could do with it handheld and how it would feel. So
I bet you've still got that name badge as well. That's a memento.
We had no handheld bars on it at that time. We were just having a bit of a mess around. That was probably someone had a hand under there. Make sure it didn't drop it.
And that was the Arri, did you say
765, yeah. That's bigger and heavier than the IMAX. So you couldn't use that handheld. I mean, that's impossible because of the ergonomics of it. You can see there that the grips are rigged on 2 IMAX cameras on the car, along with stills cameras and behind the scenes cameras. And but it's a different, I think working with IMAX, you have to think about things a little bit differently because of the size and the weight of them. It's not quite as, I mean, you can't take a camera and just jump into a car and off you go, let's shoot some stuff. It doesn't, it's not physically possible. So
you're not doing a lot of walk and talks or anything like that, handheld, that kind of thing.
Well, we had a long walking. I mean, we did a lot of sequences in Italy. Was we did a lot of handheld there. But as you can see, it's just a very hard thing to manage. But I can't even remember what the question was you asked me, Ed.
Well, my main question is that can sometimes happen if you've got the camera's too heavy.
Yeah, that's too much IMAX. That's squatted down and the pants top.
This isn't a joke, is it, Ozzy? This actually happened.
Yeah, no, that's not a joke. That was that actually happened. A warning to everyone. You need some strong shorts and some sensible underwear.
Smaller. But I remember having a conversation with you the other day about do you imagine a time where these cameras could get any smaller? Or if we're talking about large format film cameras, is there a possibility that an IMAX camera could be, or another third-party company could come in and make a smaller camera?
I mean, I'm no aficionado when it comes to the technicalities of that, but we did have conversations with regard to that and with, the technicians that were there with IMAX cameras. And I think it seems like it is possible. Yes, it is possible, or would be possible. But you would need, IMAX or someone would need to put the money behind the development and the research, I guess, into it. And also, how much demand would there be more demand for it if that was the case? I'm not sure. I mean, it'd be a lot to consider before the money was spent. And I have no idea what it costs to build a new camera, but I could imagine it would be an awful lot of money. But in answer to your question, yeah, I think it is possible with the discussions that were had, but I don't know whether the practicalities and the finances would allow it.
So I just want to come to you. I'm pretty fascinated, Lilia, with this concept of obviously a lot of productions come to Morocco to film. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about integrating, the Western culture of overseas crews with, with the culture of the local crew like yourselves. How does that work for you?
Well, actually, it's really interesting to see when I arrived in Morocco, I had a European background, so I knew quite well how the system was working in England or France, because I've been working there quite a lot, and that's where I learned to work. And it's quite military, like everybody's doing this, like it's very, you do that, and it's the way you do it, and it's how you learn, and you have to follow the rules, and it's one system, and it's not changing much from a production to another. And when I arrived in Tunisia first, then Morocco, in the Arabic countries, and I'm half Arabic, so I speak the language and all that, so which is quite good to have. I've tried to apply myself these techniques working with my crews, and it didn't work at all. It was just like, what are you talking about? This is not the way you should speak to us. This is not the way you should tell us to do things. This is not. So I understood there was a huge gap in between that culture and that other one, the European way or Occidental way and the Oriental way. So whenever I understood there was something to create here, there was a way to ask things in between, because they know, well, the local here, they know the country very well. They know perfectly what they are going to find equipment wise. They know how to adjust to climate, how to adjust to the mountains and all things like this. So they have that great competence. And now also, because they are so used to work with international production, and we always find the same guys working on this project, now they are really great technicians with the time. But then I had to find each time an international production arrives, then we have to create bridges. We have to be, some people in the crew are going to make that communication happen, so it's fluid. So we have created a different way to work, and it works really. So you've got these kind of people making the bridge in between the culture, in between the crew members, because it's very often you find the British people there and the local there, and they are not mixing together. So at some point, so everybody can work well together, we have to somehow try to mix everybody. And I very much find myself in that place as an operator, because I did get the information from the top, and I had to relay this information to the crew members in the local crews. But then I know that I couldn't pass that information in the same way. I had to adjust my language. I had to adjust the information, so that happened. So the whole link gets there, and each time I saw it happened very often to me to see international members coming and asking for something in a way I knew it wasn't going to pass through, because it wasn't the right way to ask, and it's just cultural. And I had also to make a little adjustment being a female, because of course in Oriental countries, Arabic world, there is still that little difference in between men and women. So you have to understand that you won't be able to ask things in a direct way, like do that because I ask you to do it, but you have to ask for help. You have just to understand that if you are a woman and you ask, okay, could you please help me on this? I need you. Then it works. And it's actually an American cinematographer, female American cinematographer, who teach me that, because she arrived and she was so smiling to each other, and she was completely assuming her female position, not trying to be a male, not trying to be a man, just assuming the fact that she was a female and asking kindly to everybody to help her. And it did work in a way I haven't seen that before. So I just thought, okay, don't try to be a man, just be a female. Oh, it's true, you are doing that male job, but you are a woman. It doesn't mean you are weaker. It just means you are different, as everybody is different from another. So the cultural difference and the gender difference needs, again, to be flexible and to observe how things are happening around you, so you find which link is going to open the doors.
Yeah.
And there's another thing is I'm also watching that cultural difference now in the lockdown situation, where I have all these discussions on the ACO speaking about how we're going to go back to work, and how we're going to ask and demand with the union and all that for protections and to be paid on quarantine, for example, and all that. Here in Morocco, we don't have any of that because there is no union. So everybody's working for it. Like, people are going to be happy to go back to work, no matter how. So that's also something I've tried to work on, being here, trying to create a union, trying to connect people and say, okay, you've got enough experience. You can have a label, like you can be one person to say, okay, I've worked on enough things and I'm worth that money, and I won't accept to work in some kind of shitty conditions. But so I've spoken to the guys here and there saying, okay, maybe we should try to make a range of wedges for this kind of project and all that. So I've started to spread the word. And as a female, as a stranger also, because I'm not Moroccan, I'm Tunisian, I didn't think it was my place to lead the whole union thing and to try to make it happen. But I was kind of giving ideas here and there. And at some point, the assistant I'm working with have done that union thing, and they've started working on it. But it didn't 3 or 4 meetings, it didn't carry on. That didn't happen. So I believe that union thing still need a little more time to happen. And culturally again, it's a difference. So it's that all that is interesting, because we don't play on the same ground, really, even doing the same work. It's really different.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're uniquely placed, you know, to bridge those cultures there, and congratulations on doing the work of you know, trying to push for unionization out there as well. I'm sure the ACO will you know, help in any way it can with that sort of stuff. So it's great. It's really great. I suppose we should move on to the worst day. I don't want to bring a downer on it, but you know, it is a learning, you know, experiment. Tell us, Roger, what's your worst day at the office? You know, or one of your most challenging moments? And what can we learn from maybe that experience, do you think?
No, the truth is, I've never really had a bad day at the office. You know, not really. You know, sometimes things don't go quite according to plan, but I've never had a bad day. I mean, I've only had good days at the office, but relatively, I have had an unfortunate experience that could be described as a worst day experience. I was asked to go to, this is a few years ago, about 15 years ago. I was asked to go to another country, another continent, actually, to do a 5-night Steadicam shoot, and it was a commercial for a mobile phone company, but it was a worldwide ad, but it was a local production company, and it was a big budget, and I'd never worked with this company before, and I was looking forward to it, traveling around the world with flight cases, and it's great, and there's always an adventure on offer, and this proved to be an adventure. I'd stuck myself a good deal. I kind of always negotiated and still do my own deal, and the deal was that I would be paid on the day that I arrived. So I'd be paid in effect up front, but they'd pay me when I got into the country. And a deal's a deal. So I was looking forward to that. When I arrived, I had to get my gear ready for the first day's filming. So I didn't create a fuss when I saw the money hadn't gone through. It was a 5-night shoot, and I was going to have a rest day, and then I'd fly home. I won't say which country it was, because protect the innocent and the guilty. But the first day of the shoot, I arrived on set, and the director wasn't wasn't particularly, I think he was on cocaine. It was a bit of a funny old thing. He wasn't particularly welcoming, and because it was a mobile phone commercial, he told me that he wanted to shoot the whole thing on a mobile phone, which was fair enough if that works. But the agency went against him, and they said they wanted to use Steadicam. So then I turned up, and I think he was a bit annoyed that I was taking a lot of his budget away. We got through the first day shooting though, and it was all fine. And I sort of asked production to, as the money hadn't gone in, asked them to make sure that they could pay me, and they were saying, yeah, etc., etc. Yeah, don't worry about it. I don't mind. I'm not afraid to kind of ask people to keep their promises when it comes to that kind of thing. You've got to defend yourself. But and I thought these guys were being a bit evasive. I smelt a rat, and I thought maybe I could be working there all week, thousands of miles away from home, and then fly home and have the mother of all battles trying to get the money out of them because they weren't doing what they said they would. So for the first 3 nights, production promised to pay me, but nothing appeared. Is this, am I going on, Ollie? Ozzy, am I all right? So for the first 3 nights, production promised to pay me, but nothing appeared in my bank account. And my sort of power of negotiation was being lost as the week went through. And my local camera colleagues said that I had to be careful because they're not such a good company. My bullshit antenna was firmly erect by now, and I wasn't happy. So, and don't forget, I'm here on my own. It's not like I'm part of a big production company with people to protect me from all this. I'm on my own in a foreign country, thousands of miles away. They owe me lots of money, and if I'm going to get it, I've got to be assertive. So the last day was my last chance to get the money out of them. And I told production that I wanted the money delivered to my hotel room in cash, otherwise I wouldn't come to work for the last night. And they agreed. And it was lunchtime on the last day, and I was in my hotel room, and the bell rang, and there was a young man, teenager, with a briefcase in his hand. And I invited him into my room, and he put the briefcase on the bed. And I opened it up and started counting the money. But there was a lot of cash there because I was there for a long time, and in those days I could get paid quite well. And it was taking me too long to count the money because I had to be on set. So I had to ask this young lad to help me count it, and then we could leave more quickly. And as he was counting the money, he told me that this was his first ever job in the business, and he was already going to a hotel room with a foreigner and a briefcase full of cash. I thought it was quite a funny situation. Even at the time, I could feel myself going. We counted the money. It was all in local currency, but it was about $2 grand short. And they were clearly trying to stitch me up. But I went to work anyway, and told them that I needed the rest of the money by midnight. We started the last night's shoot. I was trying to concentrate on my work. You know, I wasn't after aggravation. I was there to do some nice work. They slowly drip fed me the cash throughout the evening, and when we got to about 2 o'clock, the agreed time was midnight, but we got to about 2 o'clock, and the final payment hadn't arrived, and I'd had enough by then. I calmly put my Steadicam down on its docking bracket and said, "That's it. I'm not doing any more." And I said to an assistant, I said, "Please, would you go and get my flight cases? I'm packing my gear up." And it was a, we were in the middle of the shoot, and it's not something that you want to do. It's a big deal behaving like that, and it's not something that I've done before or since. So I don't want anyone to think that I've got a bad attitude. But I was pushed into it, and I was on my own, and all my aces, if you like, were running out of their value. So once I started packing my gear up, surprise, surprise, despite them saying they couldn't get any more money, it arrived, and I re-rigged the Steadicam in a couple of minutes, and we carried on shooting. And the focus puller told me, I was in quite a violent country, and the focus puller told me to be very careful because if people knew that I'd got cash on me, they'd kill me. So that wasn't very good. No, that was the end of the shoot though. I'd got the money successfully, and then the only thing I had to do would be get my gear home, because the production company were going to freight my gear back to London, but I didn't trust them. So I contacted Dynamic International, who are a freight company. They're really helpful, and I'd used them before, and I phoned them up and told them what was going on, and they said, "Don't worry, we'll sort you out." And they took my gear back to London, which was fantastic. So the gear was safe, and I just had to get myself home then, and I went back to the hotel for some sleep. The production were going to take me to the airport, but again, I chose to organise that myself, because I could see myself getting dumped in a lake by some bad guys, stealing all my cash and making it a definite worst day.
It sounds like something from a mafia film or something like that.
No, it sounds like something from Goodfellas. There you go.
How did it end? I might have to wrap this up, Roger.
Well, no, well, it ended by it ended. Okay, there is some more, but if you've got to wrap it up, then
sorry.
No, it's fine. I got myself next day back to the airport, and I was flying BA. And again, in those days, they just flied you business class. So it was fantastic. I got to the BA lounge and I thought, great, I've got away with it. And then just as I sat down in a nice comfy chair with a gin and tonic, the phone rang. And it was the production manager. And she said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at the airport." And she was very angry with me. She said, "Don't you ever come back to this country again, you," swear word.
Yeah.
I could have had you shot, you swear word. I could have got my boyfriend to break your effing legs. And wow. This is the production manager. And I sort of sanctimoniously said, "You can apologize whenever you like." She said, "I'm not effing apologizing to you," and put the phone down.
That's not the last time a production manager has spoken to you like that.
No. Well, I'm used to it now, of course, but that was then. And when I got back to the UK, I knew another producer who worked out there, and I phoned him and told him what had gone on. And he said that he's heard of this production company behaving like that with locals, but never with a foreigner. So I was the first, you see. Wow. I don't know if there's a best day or a worst day. It's kind of just an everyday tale of a camera person flying around the world trying to earn a living. That's all it was, really.
But if anyone wants any further detail on that mafia story, get in touch with Roger on his website. Just Google rogertooley.com and you should be able to get in touch with him. Mike Parmenter from Optical Support says, "Roger, that reminds me of those outstanding invoices from Optical Support. Bring the cash to my home at the end of the week. That would be great."
You got it, Mike, no problem.
Moving on to Ozzy. I wonder if you could tell us, I don't know if it's as sort of, gangstery as that, but you got any other?
Well, if we're going down that route, I mean, I've got some stories from other countries trying to get paid, but maybe everyone will be bored by that by now after Roger. So I'll tell another story instead. I guess I would say a bad day I had. This is quite a while ago now. We recce'd a location to shoot this big scene with a lot of extras, and after the recce, during the ride, we discussed the shots, how it would be done, and so you put forward to production the equipment that we thought we would need to achieve these shots that the director was after. But production had other ideas. They didn't want to book the equipment we'd asked for because they had found a cheaper option. So I had expressed my concerns, and those were ignored, and we moved on. So it came to the day of shooting, and basically the equipment they had ordered didn't perform, and we couldn't execute the shots that we wanted from this equipment. So I ended up strapping my Steadicam on and trying to do some of the shots that we were after with a Steadicam that should have been shot off this vehicle and crane. And then unfortunately, during one of the takes, it involved running down a hill with a lot of people around me. two of them bumped into me, one side, one the other. And so I went down with the rig, smashed it into the ground, fell on top of it. And I mean, apart from the AC, no one even asked, "Are you all right?" You know, pulled myself up. I was thinking, you know, I was swearing and thinking, I'm not going to do that again. The director was kind of, what's wrong with that? That was great. I'm going to use that bit as it smashes into the ground. And like, yeah. So I wasn't best pleased. But I guess I think then for me, the moral of the story, I suppose, was that, is I learned then to be vocal and to fight my corner more in getting what we think, is definitely needed. And also not to ever put myself at risk like that again, because it could have ended up a lot worse than it did, because you're still desperately trying to give them what they want by any means you can. But it was a lesson learned. I put myself at risk and I put my equipment at risk. And sometimes people don't really care that much about you. They just want their shots and they want to move on. So it was a bit of a lesson learned. So it wasn't a great. I mean, they were still happy with what we shot. We found, worked our way around the lack of good equipment. But it wasn't a pleasant day. It made it hard, a lot harder than it should have been. And some
It was a bit short, that story, if I may say so.
Yeah, I mean, could
Too
have.
short.
We've only got limited amount of time.
It's so long. I didn't pitch in with.
Well, I thought it was quite concise. It was nice. I got all the main points in there. I thought it was brilliant. But we, obviously we take safety extremely seriously, and that's a really important point there, Ozzy, I think. And I know that you agree with that, Roger. I know we all do, and you've got a story about that. But I think I might have to come back to you on that one, because Lilia, we'd like to hear from you, obviously, about maybe it's not a nightmare day for you, or what do you think? Is there that sometimes where you've been frustrated?
Hello. So is it the day where I lost my crew?
The worst day. Well, tell us about a worst day you had.
Well, that story that Ozzy was telling, it reminds me of a bad day. But I'm going to go on another day. We were shooting on a commercial, and we had we knew the schedule was impossible. So we knew we were going to go over and over and over for a couple of days, like shooting 16 hours a day, or 17. It happens a lot here. And we had something like maybe six locations or 7 locations per day. And we had a lot of special effects. I was DPing on that. And so I arrived there, and I had my electrician crew, and they were all working nicely with me. And at some point I was like very much worried about the pace we were taking, because there was a lot to do, and it was complicated because, as I said, VFX, special effect, all that, we had to set things really well. And at some point I had that gaffer coming to me, and I was telling him, okay, please put this one here and the projector here, and I need that here and that. I was completely into the work. And he came to me and he started to say, you are not speaking well. And I said, sorry. Yeah, no, you are not talking like the way you speak. You are not watching me when you speak. I was just in my head, like we had so much to do. Okay. I said, okay, sorry. I'm going to pay attention to how I'm speaking to you. And let's carry on working. And we went like this the whole day. And all of a sudden we lost a location. So we had to work by night on the street. We have done recce's for that street, but we didn't have that location anymore. So we knew we had to go by night shooting in the streets. And everything was 360 degrees, all the shot. 360 degrees, and you shoot. And so it was a Rona then. So we had to adjust to a different location by night, 360 degrees. So I arrived in that location, and I haven't done the records on this. Someone else has done it, I think the director, and he picked up a place which was almost pitch black, no lights, no street lights. So you arrive there, you've shot 15 hours, and then you lost your crew, basically, because there was also a little bit of something about how I was speaking to people. Yeah, maybe.
Like a mutiny
Okay.
was starting.
I don't know what that was, but it was crap. And you have to work, and you don't have your crew anymore, because it's after 17 hours, you don't have your crew, and you have to find a solution. And there isn't much light there. And we had the Alexa LF, so we were lucky. And with great primes, and I think it was his signature primes. So we had enough. So the first thing I've done is that because it was again 360 degrees, we had to change the car in between with the lock off. It was a nightmare. And then I took the camera, I put it there. I said, okay, what do I have? What is that street giving me? Because I don't have the time to break the Janie in the other side of the road, because I don't have the crew to do it. It's like my gaffer is not with me anymore. It's I don't know if it's a mutinery or what, but they weren't agree with what production was doing, and I understand them. It's fine, it's okay. But there was all that tension around, and at some point you watch around and say, okay, so I've got some detail there, something to start working, and then I'm going to work with Asteras and with battery, with what the sky panel stuff. Like, I'm going to hide this. I'm going to ask the guy of PFX if I can paint this out. And so, and that was, it was one of the worst day ever. But also, a worst day is always one of the best also, because you can reach that state of, okay, now I'm confronted to something that is not cool. So that's one of the places where you get the most creative, and where you can try something you wouldn't try otherwise. You have to find solutions which are not expected. You have to deep into your resources and try to make it happen. So, and that's where it starts to be interesting. That I like these days, because they allow you to be in your discomfort zone and to be the most creative ever.
You're backed into a corner, aren't you? And you have to act. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you would do that any differently. Really, there's what can you learn from that though, Lilia? Because it sounds like the circumstances were against you anyway in terms of everything. You couldn't have done it any differently, really.
Well, you cannot do it differently, but after that, that you can manage that kind of situation in very few elements. So you are not going to cover yourself too much, because that with 3 Asteras you can make it. It's also
if worst comes to worst, you've got backup.
you know how to reduce, how you understand that technology now is allowing you to reduce, to work in a different way. You can always find a way out of it. It might take a little more time, but after 17 hours anyway, I don't know what half an hour can make the difference, really. But it was a tricky day anyway. It was.
Shall we lighten the mood and talk about our sort of, our best days? What have I got written down here? What do you think, Roger? Is that something from you in terms of your best day, your most proudest day that you've had?
How long do you want me to talk for?
I'm going to take you out of the toilet.
We might have to keep these a little bit shorter now. We're starting to.
Well, okay, this was definitely a 1997 best day. It was in 1997, and I was working on. In fact, have you got that photograph?
Yes. When you say that photograph.
That photograph of me on stage.
Oh yes, of course, yes, I can do that.
I was working on the Spice Girls film, Spice World, and it was a funny old job in some ways, but you've got to enjoy yourselves when you're working on a film like that. Mel B had one of my Steadicam t-shirts. That was good. Not this, another one. And our camera car driver, Pete, used to sign autographs for the fans. So wherever we went, we were followed by thousands of screaming kids, and he'd go up to the kids behind the barriers. And I remember him doing it at Twickenham Studios, and he'd say to the children, "Do you want the girls' autographs?" And they'd say, "Oh, yes, please, mister." So he'd take a handful of their autograph books and go on back of the camera truck and sign the Spice Girls autographs himself, standing there with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth going, "Melanie C." And then he'd go and give the autograph books back to the very grateful people. So if there's anybody out there who thinks they've got some original Spice Girls autographs, they might want to have another look, because it could be signed by Pete Cameracar instead. But on the day of this photograph, we were shooting some of their songs at the Albert Hall, and production had told us that crew members could bring their families to the shoot to build up the audience. And my wife and children were in the audience, which was fantastic. This picture was taken by Alex Bailey, who was the unit photographer. And I must have got on quite well with the Spice Girls, because when we were between numbers, we were standing at the back of the stage. I was there with Ian Jackson of VMI now. He was operating the A camera, and I was doing lots of Steadicam. And the girls were talking to the crowd, and Jerry Halliwell said, "Where's Roger?" And someone gave me a nudge and said, "That's you, mate." And so she saw me at the back of the stage and gave me a wave and said, "Come on stage." And I didn't really need another invitation, because I don't mind a bit of a performance on stage. It's quite nice. And the Spice Girls was so big. But she said, once I got on stage, they took my hand, and there she is lifting up my arm, and they said, "This is Roger." I mean, I don't know why on earth she said this. She said, "This is Roger. He's our Steadicam operator, and we'd be nothing without him." And the Albert Hall erupted into cheers and whistles because I was on stage. And that was great. You know, my kids were in the audience, as I say. And there I was, Roger Tooley, live at the Albert Hall for one night only. That was definitely a good day.
We'd be nothing without him.
Yeah, that can be a quote. I'll have that on the T-shirt.
On the website, you know, any of those things. Yeah. How about you, Ozzy? Best day?
Again, I don't know whether I should try and tell a story out to Roger or something, something amusing or something a bit more related to what we do. What do you think, Rog?
Oh, I think you should do your own thing, mate.
Well, one of the best work experiences that I had, not necessarily the most fun time. Well, it was a fun time, but I did a film out in Vancouver about 18 months ago that was due for release in April, but that's been put back, like many other films, for obvious reasons. I was fortunate enough to be asked to go out there to do the film with Florian Hofmeister, with a director called Scott Cooper. The movie's called Antlers, produced by Guillermo del Toro. And that was just, I mean, it was just such an enjoyable experience, mainly because it was such a, I felt so involved in the project. Scott was such a great director. He was more than happy to have you along to meetings, tell you all the information. We would sit on Sunday nights and discuss about, you know, the next few days' work, and he'd ask questions about your thoughts on certain things, or even things that related to the scripts and characters, and or how we might do things. I've just felt so involved with the project as a whole. It just made it so satisfying and so enjoyable, especially because you then go to work and execute exactly what you had discussed. So you would walk away at night and you would think, "Wow, that was great." And that doesn't often happens, because you go to work, there'll be a provisional plan, and then that'll change because things will change in the morning. So there'll be the provisional plan, and then there'll be the plan that you start with, and then there'll be something else that probably comes out at the end. But this, we managed to kind of stick to stick to what we wanted. And I hope, and I think we gave Scott what he was after. But it was good times when things go well and everybody's on board and things are ticking along nicely and everybody's happy at work. But just that feeling of involvement, I'd never kind of quite for a long time experienced that, what I did on that particular film, and it just made it very, very satisfying and one of the best experiences I've had at work.
Do you think that's related in some way to the level of production? So maybe the bigger the production goes, the less creative input you might have as an operator, or is that may not be sort of a de facto formula for it, but is there a correlation there, do you think?
Possibly. I mean, I guess maybe some of the bigger movies can be, they might be previs beforehand, so you ultimately start shooting a previs, so a lot of the shots can be already decided, and you're not involved with these conversations. You're not involved. You turn up and you go. I do enjoy going on recce's and having discussions, because that's when plans are made and things can get more set in stone. But if you're involved in a job where you're not involved in recce's, or the recce's are kind of done and you're just going back to scout the locations again, things are already decided how it's going to happen, then yes, it's not quite so involving. But I guess it depends. Some directors are flexible, some are not. Every job is different. All people are different. No two people are the same. So
yeah.
I mean, maybe there is a little bit of truth in what you're saying.
So what about you, Lilia? Your best day or experience?
Well, it's a mixture of the two previous stories, because I was shooting on that documentary called We Could Be Heroes, and we've been shooting for...
Sorry, Lilia, can I just interrupt you? Just so everyone knows, there is a trailer for Antlers, which Ozzy just mentioned, so feel free to check that out. And I'm just going to put up some screen grabs from your documentary on the screen. Just tell us a little bit about this excellent documentary.
So we were 3 women working on that for the shooting parts, director, sound boom and sound person, and myself. And we spent 3.5 years following Paralympic athletes and to preparing the Rio Games with all the struggles that involves in here. With they have very little to do a lot. So we were in Rio just before the competition of one of the guys here, the one that is behind, Yusuf. And we were in the stadium, and we knew at this point that we won't be able to get into the stadium to shoot the competition. Then we had a little platform very far away where we knew we weren't going to get anything from what we wanted. And so we were kind of staying in that area, that prepping area, where they were warming up and desperate to follow them inside and to follow them to the stadium. And we were just like, please, that should happen, please. And we were just like praying for that to happen, a miracle to happen. And one of the security guy watched us, and he was curious about us, like, who are these people with the camera? They don't look like TV people. These 3 girls there, what are they? And they saw that we were very much connected to some of the athletes, and so he came and he asked us what we were doing here. And so we told him the story, that we were with these guys since 3.5 years, following them, living in their places, in their houses, knowing their family, and that our dream would be to follow them to the competition. And so he went away somehow, and he came back, and he did that, like he showed me one finger, And I went down into my knees and I showed him 2 fingers, begging him to let 2 people get into the prepping, well, in near the stadium. We didn't know yet if we were going to be allowed to go to the stadium, but we were allowed to go into the next step, like closer to the stadium. So I begged him to let me and the sound girl to come with me. So we left the directors behind. So I had to take over from the director. We were used to work together, like 3.5 years working together. We know what we're doing. We know how we tell the story, really. And so we went with the security guy, and we stayed with our 2 athletes prepping in there, the competition. And I worked with a very long lens inside where they changed their clothes. Sorry, I don't get the word in English. So a very long lens. I couldn't hear anything, like, because I was too far away, but I was watching the sound engineer, and she was telling me, keep on shooting, they are saying something interesting. So I was with that very long lens, handheld, a little bit like shaky, but still good. And at some point they were entering the stadium, and the security guy was still with us and somehow letting us go there. So we carried on going there, and we thought, okay, they will stop it when they will stop us. It's fine. We have to shoot as far as we can and eventually see what happened. And I remember that moment where just before the athletes get into the stadium, there's a kind of pose. So you have the Olympic stadium right behind you, full of people, and you have these athletes getting ready. And we had a very emotional moment in between the 2 main characters of our story. And they were connected to each other, like so warm and kind to each other. And we grabbed that moment. I remember having a foot on the ramp to get to the stadium and a foot in the stadium. And I was just like, oh my God, where am I? I'm doing it. I'm not allowed at all to be there. Like the Paralympic guys are gonna kill me. All the organizations, they are gonna just kill me. But I was there and I had to shoot the documentary. I had to tell the story. So we stayed there, and then the judges asked the athletes to get into the stadium, and they let us follow them. So we've been able, with that safety guard with us, helping us somehow to make it, we've been able to stay there for an hour and to have the beginning of the competition, and to have that whole connection, that whole friendship in between the 2 guys, which we were really following from the beginning. And so the security man, he came to me 3-4 times telling me, I can't hold them anymore. It's been the 4th phone call I get, and you really, really have to go. I can't help you anymore. So we finally went away, and I realized a couple of days later that the name of that security guy was Angelo, which means angel, and we get our miracle. Yeah. And it was a beautiful moment.
There you go.
Yeah, and a couple of days later, in that stadium, we weren't allowed to go in the stadium again, but our champion, like one of the character, won the gold medal. So I had to shoot the movie is winning an Olympic medal. And I had to shoot that watching his friend reaction, because I wasn't in the right angle to shoot him, and I wasn't allowed to go in the stadium anymore.
Yeah.
So I've discovered that he was winning watching his friends. So with all that attitude, and that was like, I remember myself crying and shooting in the same time. It was really, really very emotional and strong. So yeah, these were the great days.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 things I got out of that is that, one, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone getting down on their knees asking for a sound man, a sound woman to be there with you, and The other thing is that I think, just very quickly, because we're running out of time, is that that's very interesting, isn't it? About how, as a documentarian, as a DP on a documentary, you're taking a completely different role to necessarily an operator. I mean, it is similar, but you have to be almost a director, don't you, if you're working on a documentary?
Completely, because you don't have a second take. It's happening now. So the only thing you can do, well, there are two things. The director can tap onto your shoulder, telling you, oh, there's something there happening, but you know that there is something else happening here. So you have to finish whatever happens here before you get there. So it's tricky. You have to take the right decision. It's very intuitive. You need to. That's the place where you need to be very connected to your environment and to have it near there, and to watch something here and have kind of two brains. But there's also a point where we've seen the rushes every night, and we've been discussing whatever we've been shooting, how we've shot it, all the feeling of it. And so after a little moment, you understand where to be positioned, what's the right distance, what's with the actors, well, not the actors, but the characters, how we want to shoot this, how intimate we get, how far, and what. So the language starts to build up. And because we've shot together for more than 3 years, after a while, you don't need to talk anymore. You know exactly where you're going. And the only thing is, okay, she was telling me what to get, what she wanted, what she needed to tell the story, and I was trying to catch it, and we were all aware of what was going on.
Fantastic. And recommend the documentary if anyone has a chance to see it. I'm not sure how you can see it, but try and see it. So just a very quick question we've got from Ashley Rowe. Hi, Ashley. He asks, do you ever get frustrated by directors that always want to shoot the rehearsal? Roger, you've got 30 seconds on that one.
I just do whatever the DP says. It doesn't frustrate me, but you know, if it can be lit and the DP's happy, then whatever he wants is fine, or she wants is fine.
Because there's an argument that sometimes the performance is such that it kind of requires the rehearsal, you know, to be shot.
I think people use and abuse and that argument to fit their time scale, really, a lot of the time. I mean, I never have, well, as long as it's safe, I don't mind doing something that's unrehearsed. And as long as people aren't going to shoot you in the head if you don't get it right first time.
Would you go along with that, Ozzy?
Yeah, in certain scenarios. I feel sometimes with Steadicam, if it's a Steadicam shot, it can be worth shooting in the rehearsal, because sometimes, you know, everything just slots together if it's something reasonably complicated. If it's dolly work, you know, crane work, there's more people involved. It's a kind of harder machine to manage to get right first time. It usually takes a few goes. With Steadicam, you're controlling everything yourself, so you can. It's often worth maybe just having a go at it. Can be frustrating, but again, like Roger says, I don't mind. It depends. It depends what it is. If the cast is saying, you know, we're ready, let's go, then, you know, it's worth doing it. I mean, how many times you had a rehearsal, it's been perfect, and then you you turn over and you're there a dozen takes later trying to replicate the same thing. But it can be frustrating, I understand, for a lot of departments.
How do you feel about that, Lily? Just a short answer, if you don't mind.
I feel okay with that. It's fine for me to shoot rehearsals. It's true that for actors sometimes it's better.
Well, absolutely. That's about wrapping it up for us, everyone out there. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lilia. Thank you.
Can I just say, I know I've been going on a bit. Can I just say it's been fantastic talking to you guys. And Lilia, I've never met you before, but thank you very much. You're great. And Ozzy, always nice to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while. Too long,
bro.
Try and catch up with you once we're allowed out of houses.
That's the good thing about this. It connects everyone. We can, you know, put all.
It was a great pleasure for me too.
That's very good. And Ed, you do a fantastic job, man.
Thank you very much, sir. The master giving me credit there. That's great. So thank you very much to everyone, and thank you to all the usual people, Sean, Danny, Ilana, and Chris Plevin. I'd like particularly say thank you. Thanks for even suggesting to Lilia when you worked with her to join the ACO, because now she's part of our ranks. It's great. And that's about it. So stay safe, everyone, and speak again soon. Take care.
Thanks,
Stay safe.
Roger.
Take care.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Bye bye.